I still remember the day my sister Vanessa stole my wedding. Not the wedding itself. That would have been easier to forgive. No, she stole the entire concept, down to the venue I'd been saving for since college. I'm Layla Patel, and until 3 years ago, I thought I understood my family. I thought I knew where I stood. I was the responsible one, the steady one. The one who put herself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs. The one who helped my parents with bills when times were tough. And Vanessa? She was the golden child. Always had been. Growing up as the older sister meant I cleared the path, and Vanessa strolled through it wearing designer shoes our parents somehow always found money for. But I never complained. Family is family, right? That's what I told myself as I watched her fail upward through life while I meticulously planned every step of mine. When I met Daniel at a charity fundraiser, everything changed. He was the first person who seemed to see me, really see me, not as the responsible sister, the dependable daughter, but as Layla. After 2 years together, he proposed at the botanical gardens where we had our first date, and suddenly, my methodical life had a burst of magic. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The wedding planning began immediately. I'd been dreaming about getting married at Rosemont Estate since I was a teenager. It was a historic mansion with sprawling gardens that looked like something out of a fairy tale. I'd been setting aside money for years, long before Daniel came into the picture, just to afford a down payment on the venue. When we toured it together, Daniel squeezed my hand and whispered, "You belong here, Layla, like you've stepped out of a painting." That moment, standing on the terrace overlooking the gardens with fall leaves creating a golden canopy, I felt complete. I called my parents that night, so excited I could barely get the words out. Mom sounded distracted, which wasn't unusual, but Dad congratulated us warmly. I asked if they wanted to come see the venue that weekend. "Oh, honey, we can't. Vanessa has a thing," Mom said vaguely. Vanessa always had a thing. It had been that way since we were kids. My softball games were optional. Vanessa's dance recitals were mandatory. My college graduation was attended by just my parents because Vanessa had a beach weekend planned with friends that couldn't be rescheduled. I'd long ago accepted it, but this was my wedding. "It's fine," I said, swallowing the familiar disappointment. "We've put down the deposit anyway. The wedding's going to be next October. The foliage will be perfect." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "That sounds lovely," Mom said, but something in her voice made my stomach twist. "Have you told Vanessa yet?" I hadn't. Vanessa had been dating Trevor for only 6 months, but she was already dropping hints about engagement rings and venue options. I didn't want to overshadow her relationship with my engagement news, which sounds ridiculous now, but old habits die hard. "I'll tell her this weekend," I promised. But Vanessa surprised me by showing up at my apartment the very next day, unannounced. She breezed in wearing a cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent, a massive diamond glittering on her left hand. "Trevor proposed," she squealed, flashing the ring in my face before I could even process what was happening. "I'm getting married." The timing was convenient. But I pushed aside the flicker of suspicion and hugged her, genuinely happy for my little sister, even as I wondered how I would break my own news now. "That's wonderful, Vanessa. I'm so happy for you," I said, and meant it. "Actually, I have some news too." "We're thinking of a fall wedding," she interrupted, collapsing onto my couch and scrolling through her phone. "October has the best light for photos, don't you think?" My heart stuttered. "October? Next October?" She looked up, eyes wide with what I now recognize as practiced innocence. "Yes, and guess what? Mom and Dad are going to help us book Rosemont Estate. I've wanted to get married there forever." I felt like I'd been doused in ice water. Rosemont, my Rosemont, the venue I'd dreamed of, saved for, and just put a deposit on. The venue I'd told my parents about just yesterday. That's where Daniel and I are getting married, I said weakly. Next October. We just booked it. Vanessa's expression shifted so quickly I almost missed it. Surprise, calculation, then sympathy stretched too thin across her face. "Oh, Layla," she sighed, reaching for my hand. "Why didn't you tell me? This is awkward." Trevor's parents already spoke to the venue manager. Apparently, there was some mix-up with their booking system. They double-booked that month, and the manager called this morning to say they need to resolve it. A sickening realization washed over me. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a mix-up. This was Vanessa, doing what Vanessa had always done, taking what I wanted and making it hers. "The manager didn't call me," I said slowly. "Well, they called the main contact for the larger deposit," she said, examining her nails. "Trevor's father put down the full amount this morning. Apparently there was just a small holding deposit before that. My deposit, the one I'd scraped together from years of saving. I need to call the venue," I said, reaching for my phone with shaking hands. "Mom already tried to sort it out," Vanessa said quickly. "The venue is really apologetic, but they can't accommodate both weddings that month, and since Trevor's family has connections with the board of directors." I felt numb. "So you're taking my venue?" "It's not like that," Vanessa protested, but her eyes told a different story. "Think of it this way. You can find somewhere even better. And honestly, Layla, October at Rosemont suits my color palette better anyway. You're more of a spring bride." I don't remember much of what happened next. I know Vanessa left, promising to make it up to me somehow. I know I called the venue and discovered that yes, they'd accepted a full payment from the Patels for an October wedding, assuming it was an expansion of my existing reservation. I know I called my mother, who sighed and said, "Layla, please don't make this difficult. You know how Vanessa gets when she doesn't get her way. You've always been the reasonable one." The reasonable one. The one expected to bend, to accommodate, to sacrifice. Always. That night, Daniel held me as I cried, my tears soaking through his shirt. "We'll find another venue," he promised, "one that's just for us." But it wasn't just about the venue anymore. It was about my family choosing Vanessa. Again. It was about them knowing what this meant to me and deciding my feelings weren't important enough to consider. The following weekend, my parents invited us to dinner. I thought maybe they'd reconsidered, that they were going to apologize and help fix the situation. Instead, they unveiled their solution. "We think you and Vanessa should have a double wedding," Mom announced, beaming like she'd just solved world hunger. "At Rosemont, just like you both wanted. Isn't that perfect?" Vanessa sat across from me, smiling tightly. She didn't want to share her day any more than I wanted to share mine, but she'd been backed into a corner by her own manipulation. "Absolutely not," I said quietly, surprising everyone, including myself. "I won't be sharing my wedding day." "Layla," Dad began, his tone carrying that familiar note of disappointment he reserved just for me. "This is the most sensible solution. We can't afford to pay for 2 separate weddings at venues like Rosemont, and you know your sister has her heart set on it." "So did I said. "For years. You knew that." Mom reached across the table, patting my hand with false sympathy. "Honey, it's just a venue. The important thing is you're marrying Daniel. Why does it matter where it happens? If it didn't matter, then why couldn't Vanessa pick somewhere else?" But I knew better than to ask that question. Logic had never applied. To Vanessa's wants versus mine. "Fine," I said, withdrawing my hand. "Vanessa can have Rosemont. Have a beautiful wedding, Vanessa. I hope it's everything you've dreamed of." Relief washed over their faces. Crisis averted. Layla was being reasonable again. Layla was standing down. But what they didn't understand was that something had broken inside me that couldn't be fixed with platitudes or dismissals. "Where will you have your wedding, then?" Vanessa asked, unable to keep the triumph from her voice. I looked her straight in the eye. I'll let you know when the invitations go out. The stunned silence that followed was the first genuine reaction I'd gotten from my family in years. Walking out of that dinner, Daniel took my hand. What are you planning? He asked softly. I squeezed his fingers. Something they'll never see coming. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. In the months that followed, I retreated from my family. I stopped taking my mother's calls after the third conversation that began with, Vanessa is so stressed about the wedding, and ended with requests for me to help her, with various tasks. I declined Sunday dinners. I stopped being available. Meanwhile, Daniel and I quietly changed our plans. We moved our wedding date up by 3 months, setting it for July instead of October. We found a different venue, not a historic mansion, but a cliffside overlook facing the ocean that took my breath away the moment we saw it. It cost less than half of what Rosemont would have, allowing us to splurge on other elements of the day. I asked my father's brother, Uncle Raj, to walk me down the aisle instead of my father. Uncle Raj had always seen me, had always celebrated my achievements with genuine pride. When I explained the situation, leaving out the rawer details to preserve some family dignity, he didn't hesitate. It would be my honor, he said simply. Also made another decision, one that would forever change my relationship with my family. I didn't invite them to the wedding, not my parents, who had dismissed my dreams to cater to Vanessa's whims. Not Vanessa, who had deliberately stolen something she knew was precious to me. None of them. Instead, I invited the family I'd chosen, friends who had supported me through every up and down, Daniel's warm and loving relatives who had embraced me immediately, colleagues who had become mentors and confidants. When the invitations went out, my phone exploded with messages from my mother. Is this some kind of joke? She demanded when I finally answered. Where is our invitation? There isn't one, I said calmly. What do you mean there isn't one? We're your parents. Yes, you are, but you won't be at my wedding. The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the tears, the accusations, the guilt trips. Dad got on the phone, his voice stern with authority that had cowed me since childhood. Layla, you can't be serious. This is childish spite because of some misunderstanding about a venue. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I replied, surprised by how steady my voice remained. It was a choice. You chose Vanessa, as you always have. Now I'm making my choice. More attempts to change my mind followed. Emotional appeals, extended family members calling to reason with me. Even Vanessa crying about how I was ruining her wedding with all this drama. But for the first time in my life, I held firm against the tidal wave of family pressure. My wedding would be mine, untainted by their presence and the familiar pain of being second best. July arrived with perfect weather, warm sunshine with a cool breeze carrying the salt tang of the ocean. As I stood at the top of the cliff path in my simple white gown, Uncle Raj beside me, I saw Daniel waiting at the altar we'd constructed from driftwood and wildflowers. 70 of our closest friends and chosen family watched with genuine joy. As Uncle Raj walked me toward my future husband, no one was missing. Everyone who truly cared about us was there. The ceremony was everything I'd dreamed of, but nothing like I'd planned a year ago. It was better. Authentic, intimate, filled with love that didn't come with conditions or comparisons. We danced under the stars that night, the ocean crashing against the cliffs below, and I realized I felt something I hadn't felt around my family in years: peace. It wasn't until September, a month before Vanessa's lavish Rosemont wedding, that the consequences of my decision fully materialized. I was having lunch with a cousin who had attended both my wedding and now was part of Vanessa's bridal party. Your parents are beside themselves, she told me, picking at her salad. Vanessa's wedding is turning into a disaster. What? Do you mean? I asked, curious despite myself. I sat frozen with my phone pressed against my ear, Daniel watching me with concern from across our living room. Vanessa was the last person I expected to hear from, especially sounding like this, vulnerable, desperate. Layla? Are you there? Vanessa's voice cracked. I'm here, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. What do you need help with? She took a shuddering breath. Everything's falling apart. The venue canceled on us. Half the family isn't coming. Mom's having daily meltdowns. Dad's threatening to cancel the whole thing because of the new venue. Costs. A pause. I know I don't deserve your help, but I don't know what to do. Something strange happened inside me then. For years, I'd imagined a moment like this, Vanessa finally facing consequences, finally needing me more than I needed her. I'd fantasized about the satisfaction I'd feel, but now that it was happening, all I felt was hollow. Why me, Vanessa? Why not one of your bridesmaids? Or Mom? Because you're the only one who'll tell me the truth, she whispered. Everyone else just says what they think I want to hear. And because you managed to create something beautiful when everything went wrong. Your wedding. Everyone says it was perfect. I closed my eyes, remembering the sunset over the ocean. Daniel's face as we spoke our vows. The feeling of complete rightness that had nothing to do with centerpieces or venues. It was perfect for us, I said carefully. But it wouldn't have been right for you. I know, she said, and for once there was no edge to her voice. That's why I need your help. Not to copy you, but to figure out what would be right for us. Daniel was watching me intently. He mouthed, You don't have to, but I knew what my answer would be. Let me think about it, I told Vanessa. I'll call you tomorrow. After hanging up, I curled against Daniel on the couch, his steady heartbeat grounding me as I tried to sort through my tangled emotions. What are you thinking? He asked, stroking my hair. I'm thinking that helping her feels like letting her win again, I admitted. But not helping her feels like being petty. Daniel considered this. Whatever you decide, I support you. But Layla, you've already won. You created a wedding true to yourself. You stood up to your family. You broke the pattern. Helping Vanessa now would be from a position of strength, not weakness. I thought about that all night. By morning, I'd made my decision. I called Vanessa and told her to meet me at a coffee shop halfway between our apartments, neutral territory. When she arrived, I barely recognized her. Gone was the glossy, perfectly put-together sister who always made me feel shabby by comparison. This Vanessa had dark circles under her eyes, unwashed hair pulled into a messy ponytail, and none of her usual designer armor. Thank you for coming, she said, sliding into the seat across from me with none of her usual dramatic flourish. I nodded, pushing a coffee toward her. Tell me everything that's happening. For the next hour, Vanessa unloaded. The venue cancellation had started a domino effect of disasters. The new venue, yes, the community center with its wood paneling, couldn't accommodate their original guest list of 250, so they were having to make painful cuts. The caterer they'd chosen didn't serve that location. The florist had doubled their delivery fee due to the change. Their photographer was now unavailable on the rescheduled date. And that's just the logistics, Vanessa said, rubbing her temples. The family drama is worse. Uncle Raj refuses to attend because of how we treated you, and now his entire side of the family is boycotting. Mom blames me for stealing your venue and causing all of this. Dad's threatening to pull funding entirely if we don't downsize dramatically. I listened without interrupting, without the rush of vindication I might have expected. Instead, I felt an odd sense of recognition. This frantic, overwhelmed woman opposite me was finally experiencing what I'd felt my entire life, the weight of expectations she couldn't possibly fulfill. What do you actually want, Vanessa? I asked when she finally ran out of steam. She blinked at me. What do you mean? I mean, strip away what Mom wants, what Dad's willing to pay for, what Trevor's family expects, what you think will look good. On Instagram, if you could have any wedding at all right now, what would it be? She stared into her coffee, and I realized with a shock that she didn't know. She'd never considered what she actually wanted, only what would impress others or outshine. Me, I don't know, she admitted finally. I've been so focused on having the perfect wedding that I haven't thought about what that means for me and Trevor. Start there, I said. Figure that out first, and the rest will follow. Vanessa looked up, her eyes shining with unshed tears. Will you help me? Please? I know I don't deserve it after what I did to you. I studied my sister's face, searching for the manipulation I'd grown so accustomed to finding there. But all I saw was genuine remorse and fear. I'll help you, I said at last. But on one condition. You need to apologize to me. Really apologize. For taking my venue, not because it ended up backfiring on you, but because it was wrong. Vanessa didn't hesitate. I'm sorry, Layla. I knew how much Rosemont meant to you, and I took it anyway because I was jealous. I've always been jealous of you. I nearly choked on my coffee. Jealous? Of me? You were the golden child. Golden child. Vanessa shook her head. I was the favorite, not the golden child. There's a difference. You are everything I'm not. Self-sufficient. Respected. When you accomplish something, people aren't surprised because, of course, Layla succeeded. She always does. When I accomplish something, it's because Mom and Dad pulled strings or because I got lucky. I sat back, stunned by this revelation. All these years, I'd envied her position in the family, never realizing she might have envied mine in the world. That doesn't excuse what you did, I said, finding my voice again. No, it doesn't, she agreed. Nothing does. And I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Over the next 3 weeks, I helped Vanessa rebuild her wedding from the ground up. Not the wedding our mother wanted for her, or the wedding designed to outshine mine, but a wedding that actually reflected who she and Trevor were as a couple. We toured smaller venues that had last-minute availability, a renovated barn with string lights, a boutique hotel with a rooftop garden, a historic library with soaring ceilings. None had the grandeur of Rosemont, but each had its own charm. Vanessa surprised me by choosing the library. It feels more like us, she admitted. Trevor and I actually met in the university library. He spilled coffee on my economics textbook. This was news to me. I thought you met at a frat party. She had the grace to look embarrassed. That's what I told Mom and Dad. They wouldn't have approved of me dating a scholarship student back then. I raised my eyebrows but didn't comment. It seemed my sister had more layers than I'd given her credit for. With the venue settled, we tackled the guest list. The original 250 had been mostly our parents' business associates and distant relatives no one actually liked. Vanessa cut it to 100 people who actually mattered to her and Trevor. Mom's going to have a fit, she said as we finalized the list over takeout in my apartment. Probably, I agreed. But it's your wedding, not hers. Vanessa looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. When did you get so brave? I considered. This. When I decided I'd rather have peace than approval, she nodded slowly. I think I'm finally understanding what that means. The next big hurdle was telling our parents about the new plans. Vanessa asked me to come with her for moral support, and against my better judgment, I agreed. It would be the first time I'd seen them since I'd uninvited them from my wedding. We met at their house, the home where we'd grown up, now feeling smaller and less intimidating than I remembered. Mom answered the door with a tight smile that faltered when she saw me standing beside Vanessa. Layla, she said, her voice a mixture of surprise and wariness. "We weren't expecting you." "I invited her," Vanessa said firmly. "We need to talk about the wedding." Dad was in the living room, pretending to read a newspaper but clearly waiting for this conversation. He nodded stiffly at me but didn't speak. "We've figured out a new plan," Vanessa announced, pulling out her tablet and opening a presentation we'd prepared together. "The library on Maple Street has availability. It's smaller but beautiful, and it actually means something to Trevor. And me." She walked them through the new vision. Simplified flowers, family-style dining instead of a formal seated dinner, a string quartet instead of the 12-piece band they'd originally booked. "And the guest list is now 100 people," she concluded. "Our closest friends and family only." Mom's face had grown progressively more pinched through the presentation. "A library? 100 people? Vanessa, we can't possibly cut the guest list that drastically. What about the Hendersons, the Coopers? Your father does business with them." "They'll understand," Vanessa said with a confidence I'd never heard her direct at our mother before. "This is our wedding, not a networking event." Dad lowered his newspaper. "This sounds significantly less expensive than the original plan," he observed, a note of approval in his voice that made Mom glare at him. "It is," Vanessa confirmed. "About a third of the cost, actually. And Trevor and I have decided to put the difference toward a down payment on a house instead." I watched my parents' reactions with fascination. Dad looked grudgingly impressed. Mom looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "And who exactly is responsible for this sensible approach?" Mom asked, her eyes sliding to me accusingly. Before I could respond, Vanessa stepped in. "I am. Layla's been helping because I asked her to. But these decisions are mine and Trevor's," Mom sniffed. "Well, I suppose if you're determined to throw away the society wedding we've been planning—" "The society wedding you've been planning," Vanessa corrected gently. "Mom, I know this isn't what you pictured, but it's what will make us happy." "And what about Layla's involvement?" Dad asked suddenly, looking directly at me for the first time. "After everything that happened?" The room went silent. This was the closest anyone had come to acknowledging the elephant in the room, my exclusion of them from my wedding, their enabling of Vanessa's venue theft. "Layla is helping me because she's a better person than I deserve," Vanessa said quietly. "She's helping despite what I did, not because anyone's forgotten about it." I felt a rush of gratitude toward my sister in that moment, for owning her mistake, for not papering over the hurt she'd caused. "Well," Mom said, clearly uncomfortable with this turn in the conversation, "I suppose we should be grateful that at least one wedding will have family present." And there it was, the guilt trip, the passive-aggressive reminder that I had wounded them. I took a deep breath, preparing to respond, when Vanessa cut in. "Actually, Mom, that's on you and Dad. Layla had every right to exclude you after you dismissed her feelings and enabled me to take her venue. If you want to repair that relationship, you need to start by apologizing, not by making snide comments." Mom's mouth fell open. Dad's newspaper crinkled as his grip tightened. I stared at my sister, unable to believe what I'd just heard. Vanessa had never, not once in our entire lives, stood up to our parents on my behalf. "I think it's time for us to go," Vanessa said, gathering her things. "Think about the new plan. Let me know if you want to be part of it." As we left, I felt lighter than I had in months. Nothing had been resolved with my parents, but something fundamental had shifted between Vanessa and me. She'd chosen me over their approval. She'd acknowledged the truth instead of maintaining the family fiction. In the car, I finally asked the question that had been bothering me since this all began. "Why did you really take my venue, Vanessa?" The truth this time. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, eyes fixed on the road. "Because you were happy," she said simply. "Genuinely happy, in a way I've never been. You found Daniel, who loves you for exactly who you are. You were planning this beautiful wedding that was so perfectly you. And I was scared that if I didn't outdo you somehow, everyone would finally see that you've always been the better sister. Her honesty knocked the wind out of me. That's not true, I said softly. It is, she insisted. You're stronger than me, Layla. You always have been. You've built your life on your terms while I've been so busy trying to be what everyone expects that I've lost sight of who I actually am. We drove in silence for a while, the weight of decades of competition and misunderstanding between us. Do you love Trevor? I asked suddenly. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. More than anything, he's the one person who sees past all my Vanessa-ness. I laughed at that, and after a moment, she joined in. It felt foreign and familiar all at once, laughing with my sister like we were friends. When she dropped me off at my apartment, she hesitated before I got out of the car. There's one more thing I wanted to ask you, she said. Would you be my maid of honor? I know it's asking a lot after everything, but there's no one else I'd want standing beside me. I studied her face, searching for any trace of the old Vanessa, the manipulation, the calculated moves. I found none. Let me think about it, I said honestly. She nodded, accepting this non-answer with grace I wouldn't have expected from her a month ago. Inside, Daniel was waiting with dinner and a curious expression. How did it go? He asked as I kicked off my shoes. Surprisingly, healing, I said, trying to find the right words. Vanessa stood up to our parents. For me. His eyebrows shot up. That's unexpected. She also asked me to be her maid of honor. Daniel set down his fork. And what did you say? I sank onto the couch beside him. That I'd think about it. And I am. But Daniel, I'm scared. What if this is just another Vanessa performance? What if I let her back in and she hurts me again? He took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm the way he always did when I was anxious. What does your gut tell you? I closed my eyes, trying to sort through the tangle of hope and fear. That she's really trying, that something's changed. Then maybe it's worth the risk, he said gently. Not for her sake, but for yours, so you can finally heal and move forward, whatever that looks like. That night, I called Vanessa back. I'll be your maid of honor, I told her, but I have conditions. Name them, she said immediately. Complete honesty between us from now on. No more competition. And if you ever feel yourself slipping back into old patterns, you tell me so we can address it directly. I could almost hear her smile through the phone. Deal. The weeks that followed were a strange new reality. Vanessa and I worked together on her revised wedding plans, and for the first time I could remember, there was no undercurrent of rivalry. We disagreed sometimes, but the disagreements didn't carry the weight of decades of resentment. Our parents eventually came around to the new wedding plan, though Mom occasionally made comments about what could have been. Dad seemed relieved about the reduced cost, and actually began participating in some of the decisions. And then, a month before the wedding, Vanessa called me in a panic. The library just contacted us, she said, her voice high with stress. There's been a fire in their electrical system. Nothing major, but they're closing for repairs for 2 months. We've lost our venue again. I waited for the familiar feeling of schadenfreude to wash over me, for some small part of me to think karma. It never came. Instead, I heard myself say something that surprised us both. I have an idea. Well, it turns out that half the family is refusing to attend her wedding because they're angry about how they treated you. Uncle Raj especially. He's been quite vocal about it. He even shared photos of your wedding, and everyone's talking about how beautiful and meaningful it was. I hadn't asked anyone to take sides. I'd simply made my choice and moved forward. But it seemed my quiet stand had spoken volumes. That's not all. my cousin continued, leaning forward. The venue called last week. There's a problem with the foundation in the main hall. Something about water damage they just discovered. They're canceling all events for the next 6 months for emergency repairs. A strange feeling washed over me. Not satisfaction exactly, but something like cosmic acknowledgement. So where will Vanessa get married? I asked. My cousin smiled wryly. That's the best part. The only venue available on such short notice is the community center. You know, the one with the wood paneling from the 1970s and the fluorescent lighting. I didn't laugh. I didn't gloat. I simply nodded and changed the subject. But that evening, as I told Daniel about the conversation, my phone rang. It was Vanessa, calling me for the first time since our parents' disastrous dinner months ago. "Layla," she said, her voice small in a way I'd never heard before. "I need your help." "What idea?" Vanessa asked, desperation edging her voice. I took a deep breath, hardly believing what I was about to suggest. "You could have your wedding at our cliffside venue." Silence hummed through the phone. Then, "Layla, I can't take your venue. Again. That would be—" "You're not taking it," I interrupted. "I'm offering it. And it's not the same thing at all." I explained that the owner of the cliffside property had been so moved by our wedding that he'd asked if we would recommend his space to other couples. He was trying to establish it as a proper venue rather than just his private property. "It's beautiful, Vanessa. It would suit you and Trevor." The words felt strange in my mouth, but true. "And it's available on your date. I already checked." "You checked?" she asked, sounding stunned. "When?" "Right after you told me about the library fire," I admitted. "Call it intuition." What I didn't tell her was that I'd had a feeling something like this might happen, not because I believed in cosmic punishment, but because wedding planning was chaotic at the best of times. Having a backup plan had seemed prudent. "I don't know what to say," Vanessa whispered. "Say you'll look at it," I suggested. "If you hate, it will find something else." The next day, I drove Vanessa and Trevor to the cliffside property. As we wound up the narrow coastal road, I found myself nervous in a way I hadn't expected. What if she hated it? What if she loved it? But I felt territorial watching her plan her wedding in the space that had meant so much to Daniel and me. Mr. Lawson, the property owner, greeted us warmly at the gate. "Any family of Layla's is welcome here," he said, shaking their hands. She had one of the most beautiful weddings we've ever hosted. Vanessa shot me a look I couldn't quite decipher as we followed him up the path to the overlook. When we reached the top, she gasped. The view was just as spectacular as I remembered. The vast expanse of ocean stretching to the horizon, waves crashing against the rocks far below, the natural stone platform creating a perfect ceremony space. Wildflowers dotted the surrounding meadow, purple and yellow against the green. "It's beautiful," Trevor said, speaking for the first time since we'd arrived. He squeezed Vanessa's hand. "What do you think, babe?" Vanessa turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. "It's nothing like what I imagined," she said softly. Then, she looked at me, her eyes shining. "It's better." Mr. Lawson gave them a tour, showing them where the tent could be set up for the reception, where the catering team could stage, the stone path that would serve as the aisle. As he talked, I hung back, giving them space to envision their own day here without my wedding memories overlaying it. "Different from Rosemont," Trevor commented as we walked back to the car an hour later, the venue deposit paid. Vanessa nodded. "Completely different. More authentic." She said it with such certainty that I glanced at her. "How do you mean?" She gestured back toward the cliffside. Rosemont was all about looking perfect. This place just is perfect without trying. "Like you and Daniel." She paused. "Like what I want Trevor and me to be." The weeks leading up to Vanessa's wedding were a whirlwind. With the venue change came a cascade of other changes. More wildflowers, fewer formal arrangements, barefoot dancing instead of ballroom, family-style dining at long wooden tables instead of formal place settings. Through it all, Vanessa and I grew closer than we had been since childhood. Without the weight of competition between us, I discovered a sister who was insightful, funny, and surprisingly vulnerable. She discovered a sister who could be warm and supportive rather than distant and judgmental. Our parents adapted to the new dynamic with varying degrees of success. Mom still occasionally made comments about what could have been, but Dad seemed genuinely pleased with the more intimate, less expensive wedding. More importantly, he started treating Vanessa and me as adults with our own preferences and decisions, rather than extensions of his own will. 2 days before the wedding, Vanessa asked me to help her with a final dress fitting. When I arrived at the bridal salon, I was surprised to see she'd brought only me. No mom, no bridesmaids. I wanted it to be just us, she explained as the seamstress made final adjustments. Because I need to talk to you about something important. My stomach tightened. Old habits die hard, and part of me immediately prepared for some new betrayal or competition. What is it? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Vanessa took a deep breath. I need to apologize again. Properly this time. For everything. The seamstress discreetly excused herself, leaving us alone in the fitting room. Vanessa, you already apologized. No, I apologized for taking your venue, she interrupted. But that was just the final straw, wasn't it? I need to apologize for all of it, for how I treated you our entire lives, for taking advantage of your kindness, for never standing up for you with Mom and Dad, for being so caught up in being the favorite that I never bothered to be a good sister. She looked surprisingly regal standing there in her wedding dress, not because of the dress itself, which was far simpler than the elaborate ball gown she'd originally chosen, but because of the quiet dignity in her face. I was jealous of you, Layla, not just your venue, but everything. Your independence, your relationship with Daniel, the respect people have for you. I wanted what you had, but I wasn't willing to earn it the way you did. I felt tears prickling behind my eyes. I was jealous of you too, I admitted, of how easily everything seemed to come to you, of being the favorite. Being the favorite isn't the same as being loved, she said softly. I see that now. We stood, in silence for a moment, decades of misunderstanding and hurt between us, but something new growing in its place. We can't change the past, I said finally. But maybe we can build something different going forward. She nodded, wiping away a tear. I'd like that. The seamstress returned, breaking the moment. All done, she announced. What do you think? Vanessa turned to look at herself in the mirror, and for the first time, I saw her not as my rival or as the family favorite, but simply as my sister. Beautiful, flawed, and on the cusp of a new chapter in her life. It's perfect, she said, and I knew she meant more than just the dress. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The morning of Vanessa's wedding dawned clear and bright. As maid of honor, I arrived early at the cliffside venue to help coordinate the final preparations. Mr. Lawson had outdone himself. Wildflowers lined the stone path. To the ceremony site, rustic lanterns hung from shepherd's hooks to light the way as evening fell, and the reception tent was strung with hundreds of fairy lights. I was directing the florist when a familiar voice called my name. I turned to find Uncle Raj approaching, his face serious. Uncle Raj, I said, surprised. I thought you weren't coming. He embraced me tightly. I wasn't going to, he admitted. But then I received a letter from your sister. A letter? He nodded, pulling an envelope from his pocket. She wrote to me, and to every other family member who had declined to attend. A personal, handwritten letter apologizing for her behavior and explaining how she's trying to change. She said we were right to stand by you, but asked us to give her a chance to prove she can be better. I stared at him, speechless. Vanessa. Hadn't mentioned writing to the family. That must have taken her hours, I said finally. I imagine it did, Uncle Raj agreed. And it worked. Nearly everyone who had declined is here now. He squeezed my shoulder. She's trying, Layla. Really trying. I nodded, blinking back unexpected tears. She is. The ceremony was scheduled for late afternoon, when the light would be golden over the ocean. As guests began to arrive, I made my way to the small cottage where Vanessa was getting ready. I found her alone, standing at the window looking out at the ocean. She'd sent her bridesmaids to help guests find their seats, wanting a moment of solitude before the ceremony. Nervous? I asked, coming to stand beside her. She shook her head. Strangely, no. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. She turned to me, her expression earnest. Thank you, Layla. Not just for the venue, but for giving me a second chance. For showing me what courage looks like. I felt a lump form in my throat. You've done the hard work yourself. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Maybe, but you showed me it was possible. A knock at the door interrupted us. Time for the ceremony to begin. I helped Vanessa with her veil and handed her the bouquet of wildflowers and garden, roses we'd chosen together. Ready? I asked. She squared her shoulders. Ready. The ceremony was everything a wedding should be. Deeply personal, filled with genuine emotion, witnessed by people who truly cared about the couple. Standing beside Vanessa as she and Trevor exchanged vows, I felt none of the complicated emotions I'd feared. No jealousy, no sense of territory invaded. Just joy for my sister and her husband, and a profound sense of peace. During the reception, I was surprised to find my parents approaching me, glasses of champagne in hand. We hadn't spoken directly since the tense conversation about Vanessa's wedding plans. Layla, Mom began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. We wanted to talk to you. I braced myself, unsure what to expect. We owe you an apology, Dad said, the words clearly difficult for him. For a lifetime of treating you as less important than your sister. For dismissing your feelings about the venue. For not seeing how much we hurt you. Mom nodded, tears in her eyes. We've been terrible parents to you, Layla. We didn't realize it until you cut us out of your wedding. It made us look at ourselves, at our patterns. We're so sorry. I studied their faces, searching for signs of manipulation or insincerity. I found none. What changed? I asked. You did, Dad said simply. You stood up for yourself. And then Vanessa stood up for you too. It made us realize how badly we'd failed you both. We don't expect forgiveness, Mom added. But we hope, perhaps, for a fresh start. I thought about Daniel's words months ago. Maybe it's worth the risk, not for their sake, but for yours. So you can finally heal and move forward. A fresh start, I agreed cautiously. But things have to be different. They both nodded eagerly. They will be, Dad promised. Later, as the sun set over the ocean and the fairy lights twinkled in the growing darkness, I found myself standing at the edge of the cliff, watching the waves crash below. Daniel found me there, sliding an arm around my waist. Penny for your thoughts? He asked. I leaned into him, drawing strength from his solid presence. I was thinking about how differently everything turned out from what I expected. He smiled. Are you disappointed? I shook my head. The opposite. When Vanessa took my venue, I thought I'd lost something precious. But if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have found this place. I gestured to the cliffside. We wouldn't have had our perfect wedding. I wouldn't have found the courage to stand up to my family. And Vanessa and I might never have broken our destructive patterns. So, in a way, it was a gift, Daniel suggested. A painful one, I acknowledged. But, yes. From the reception tent, I could hear the sounds of laughter and music. I turned to see Vanessa and Trevor dancing, their faces lit with joy. Uncle Raj was spinning one of our cousins around the dance floor. Even my parents seemed lighter, Dad actually laughing at something Mom said. "Do you regret not inviting them to our wedding?" Daniel asked quietly, following my gaze. I considered this carefully. "No," I said finally. It was what needed to happen. For all of us. Our wedding was perfect because it was true to us. And this one is perfect because it's true to them. Daniel kissed the top of my head. "Ready to go back to the party?" I nodded, taking his hand. As we walked back toward the tent, Vanessa caught my eye across the dance floor and smiled. A smile free of competition or comparison or calculation. Just a sister, happy to see her sister. I smiled back, feeling something settle inside me. The journey had been painful, but necessary. My sister had stolen my wedding, yes, but in losing what I thought I wanted, I'd found what I truly needed: my voice, my strength, and eventually, a sister I could truly love. The next morning, Vanessa and Trevor were scheduled to leave for their honeymoon in Bali. Before they left, she pulled me aside at the farewell brunch. "I have something for you," she said, pressing a small box into my hand. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with 2 intertwined circles. "One for each of us," she explained. "Connected but separate." I fingered the pendant, touched by the thought behind it. "It's beautiful. I know we can't erase the past," Vanessa said, her voice catching. "But I promise the future will be different. I want to be the sister you deserve." I clasped the necklace around my neck, feeling the cool metal settle against my skin. "We'll figure it out together," I promised. As I watched her drive away with Trevor, Daniel came to stand beside me. "Quite a turnaround," he observed. I nodded, my hand finding the pendant at my throat. "The thing about weddings," I said thoughtfully, "is that everyone focuses on the day itself. The dress, the venue, the perfect photos. But it's what comes after that matters. The marriage, the relationships. And what comes after for you and Vanessa?" he asked. I smiled, feeling a sense of possibility I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. A new beginning. 6 months later, my phone rang late one evening. It was Vanessa. "I need your advice," she said without preamble. "Trevor and I are house hunting, and I don't want to make the same mistakes we made with the wedding, choosing things to impress other people rather than what's right for us." I smiled, cradling the phone against my ear as I curled up on the couch. "Tell me what you're looking for," I said, "really looking for." As she began to describe their dream home, I felt a quiet satisfaction settle over me. The competition that had defined our relationship for decades was truly gone. In its place was something new, something better. 2 sisters, imperfect but trying, finding their way back to each other. My quiet comeback hadn't been about revenge after all. It had been about reclaiming myself. And in doing so, I hadn't just changed my life. I'd changed Vanessa's too. Some losses, it turns out, are really beginnings in disguise. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.